Today I'm going to be going over step by step how to carve a wax for the signet ring. And the first thing I like to do is get it chucked up on the lathe and then carve the face nice and flat. I use carbide burrs for that. Once we have that done, we got to get our ring size figured out. So we'll take our boring bar and then cut it to our appropriate ring size. And when you're doing that, just make sure you're checking over and over with your digital calipers and make sure you're getting to the right size exactly. Once we've got that figured out, we'll cut off the width that we need. And then we're going to clean it up with some files to make sure it's nice and flat and exactly even thickness all the way around. Now that we have that, we're going to measure our actual ring width, which is going to be 1.8 millimeters in this example. That's a pretty standard ring width. And now what we're doing is measuring the opening of the ring and then measuring the top and then dividing that width of the opening by 2 and then adding the top to it. What we're going to be doing that for is to measure the exact center of the circle of the ring. You can see the example here. Now that we have the center figured out and get it marked with our calipers, we'll move on to dividing the complete width of the ring in half and then finding the center the other way. And in order to get that center line all the way down to the bottom, it's nice to have a good square. So that's what I'm doing here, is putting the square on that exact middle and then marking it with a scribe. And now that we have that done, we need to figure out how thick the top of our ring needs to be. So I want it to be 3.2 millimeters, and it's overall 9.86, so that ends up being 6.66, wait a second, that's no good. 6.65 millimeters we need to cut off the top in order to get it down to the 3.2 millimeters of thickness. And what I like to use to cut down the thickness of a wax is a matte wax trimmer. It's like a little table that you hook onto your flex shaft attachment. And then I have a big old huge wax cylinder burr that I find at riogrande.com. And those things work really well together to carve down a wax. So I'm just going to cut it really close to my lines. And once I have it pretty much carved down as close as I can get it, I will finish it up nice and flat with a file. Now we need to carve our sides down. And what I like to do is take a line from the edge of that 1.8 millimeter circle that we carved earlier and bring it right down to our center line to get the first part of the ring. And this particular ring is going to have a Euro shank. So in order to figure out where to draw our Euro shank, I'll bring the square to the opening of the ring and then draw a line down from the center line and do that on all the sides. Once we've done that, I will also do the same thing to the bottom of the ring. And this is going to give us a point where the Euro shank's going to meet up. So we'll just draw a nice curved line from that point down to the edge of the ring. Just like this. Do the same thing for the bottom as well. Now that we have the sides of the ring marked out, we're going to go ahead and carve those sides down. And then file it exactly to our lines. And at this point, it's really good to take a really good close look to make sure your Euro shank looks nice and even, the sides of the ring look really even, the top looks perfectly flat. And once we have that figured out, we're going to be carving down the bottom of the ring to make it narrower. So I'm going to take 2.4 millimeters off of each side. So I'll make that mark on the bottom. Then take our files and file it down so it's a nice even taper from the very bottom of the ring right to the very top of the ring. And one thing I wanted to be sure to mention is that this formula you can use on making just about any ring. And I learned this when I was studying under Paul Bartnick. He's an amazing jeweler in the Portland area. So I want to give him kudos for this layout because it's very useful. And now we need to carve the sides of the top of the ring down a little bit to give it a nice curve. So I'm going to take 1.5 millimeters off of each side and then come from the center line of our ring right up to the top and just make it curve in really nicely. Make a good signet top for it. And now that all our wax carving is done, I like to take this Vigor Wax Clean and put it on a rag and just really carefully wipe the whole surface down. And what this does, it kind of melts the wax all together, gets rid of any tooling marks, and gets it ready for a really clean casting. So here we have it. This is what the wax looks like all finished. You can also tell I carved a little of the excess material out of the underside of the signet ring, so that way it won't weigh as much when it's 14 karat white gold. And if you're not already, make sure you get subscribed so you can see this thing go through the casting process and stone setting and engraving that's going to be happening as well. Oh, and 24 karat gold inlay is going to happen on this ring too. All right, guys, stay tuned.